Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I'm a freelance artist living and working here in Portland, Oregon. You might have seen some of my murals around the city, or maybe you know my work from the big installation downtown that went up a couple of years ago. For the longest time, though, the place I felt least seen, least appreciated, was right at home, with the people who were supposed to know me best, my family. Growing up, and even well into my adult life, I was the black sheep, not in a cool, rebellious way, more in a disappointing, why can't you be more like your siblings way. While my older sister, Sarah, was excelling in law school, and my younger brother, David, was climbing the corporate ladder, I was drawing, painting, making things that didn't fit neatly into their definition of success. They weren't quiet about it either. Every family dinner was a subtle, or sometimes not so subtle, reminder that I wasn't keeping up. My art was a hobby, my freelance career was playing around, and my often empty bank account was proof that I wasn't serious about life. They'd ask when I was going to get a real job, the kind with a steady paycheck and benefits, like Sarah's firm or David's tech company. Like they had. Their eye rolls were practically a family tradition, reserved just for me whenever I talked about a project I was excited about or, God forbid, needed to borrow $5 until a small commission cleared. What they didn't see, or chose not to see, was the endless hours I poured into my craft. The rejection letters, the proposals that went nowhere, the sheer grind of building something from nothing with no safety net. They didn't see the value in the beauty I was trying to bring into the world, only the lack of a predictable salary and a fancy job title. And because I was the one struggling financially, I was often the one expected to step up in other ways: the free babysitter, the last-minute ride, the one who could lend a hand with moving or house painting because what else did you have going on? My time, my energy, my skills that weren't making real money were treated as limitless and worthless. It was years of this, a slow, steady erosion of my confidence, constantly questioning if they were right, if I was just fooling myself, a failure playing dress-up as an artist. It hurt, deeply, coming from the people whose approval I craved the most. It made me doubt my path, my worth, everything. But then something happened. Something big. A project that felt impossible, that I poured every ounce of my doubted self into, and it changed everything. It was the moment the world, a big chunk of my city at least, saw me not as the broke black sheep, but as something else entirely. It was the moment I started to see myself differently too. Have you ever felt underestimated by the people closest to you? Like you had to constantly prove your worth just to be accepted? Let me know where you're watching from and if any of this resonates with you. Stick around, and I'll tell you the story of how it all unfolded. For years, the rhythm of my life was dictated by a quiet hum of disapproval. It wasn't always loud, but it was constant, like a refrigerator motor you only notice when it stops. My family, my mother, my sister Sarah, and my brother David, they weren't overtly cruel, not in the way that would make for dramatic fights that ended with slammed doors and tearful apologies. Their methods were far more insidious: dismissal, comparison, and a relentless focus on conventional success. I remembered countless family dinners at my mother's house, the kind with the good china and the forced smiles. Sarah would talk about closing a complex deal, her voice confident, commanding respect. David would recount his latest promotion, the new corner office with the view. My mother would beam, her eyes shining with pride, recounting their achievements to anyone who would listen, sometimes even to people who weren't there. And then it would be my turn. "So, Michelle," my mother would say, turning to me, her smile tightening slightly, "how are your projects going?" The word projects, hanging in the air, was never quite a question. It was a pronouncement, a gentle reminder that whatever I was doing, it wasn't serious. I would try to share something. "I'm working on a series of abstract pieces about urban decay, exploring." "Oh, that's nice, dear," she'd interrupt, already turning back to Sarah. "Sarah, tell us again about the vacation home you're looking at in the Hamptons. Is it still just a summer place, or are you considering keeping it year-round? My contribution, my passion, dismissed before it even had a chance to breathe. David was more direct, more practical. He saw the world in spreadsheets and profit margins. So, Michelle, seriously, have you thought about getting a real job yet? Even just part-time? Something stable? You could build a portfolio on the side. He said it like offering helpful advice, but the tone was clear. Stop playing make, believe and join the real world. His real world. Sarah, with her polished nails and power suits, embodied their ideal. She didn't mock me as openly as David, but her silence spoke volumes. Or she would offer backhanded compliments. That little painting you did for Mom's hallway is cute. You should sell those at craft fairs. Good pocket money. Cute, craft fairs. My aspirations reduced to hobbyist trinkets. Their expectations weighed on me constantly. It wasn't just the words, it was the way they looked at me, the subtle sighs, the hurried changes of subject whenever my work came up. It was the feeling of being a constant source of low-level embarrassment. I wanted to make them proud, to finally earn that look of genuine admiration they reserved for Sarah and David. So I tried harder, working longer hours, taking on any small commission I could get, even if it paid next to nothing, just to say I was working. Because my income was unpredictable, I was the designated family go-to for tasks that required time but didn't pay. Need someone to pick up Uncle George from the airport at 5 a.m. on a Tuesday? Michelle can do it. She sets her own hours. Need help packing up the garage? Michelle's flexible. My mother needed her house painted, her garden redesigned, her holiday decorations put up and taken down. Sarah needed her new condo decorated on a shoestring budget. My shoestring, using my contacts for discounts, my labor for free. David needed graphics for a side project he was dabbling in. My skills, my time, free of charge. It's family, Michelle. They'd say if I ever hesitated, or, God forbid, mentioned a small fee. We help each other out. You're not exactly swamped, are you? The unspoken part. And you don't have real expenses like us, mortgages, car payments, private school tuition for hypothetical future children. My less traditional financial struggles were invisible to them, or simply proof of my poor choices. The financial exploitation stung, but the emotional toll was heavier. Being constantly told, implicitly or explicitly, that my life's work was less than, that my struggles were self-inflicted because I wouldn't conform, chipped away at my spirit. I started to believe it. I'd stand in front of my easel, brush in hand, and hear their voices, seeing their disappointed faces. What are you even doing? When is this going to pay off? You're wasting your potential. My potential, in their eyes, lay dormant because I refused to apply it to something they deemed worthy. The worst betrayal came from David, my younger brother. He was always the savviest, the most focused on money. He approached me one day, brimming with excitement about a new tech startup idea. He needed seed money to get it off the ground. He had the pitch deck, the projections, the whole 9 yards. He asked if I could invest. I laughed. David, you know I don't have that kind of cash lying around. No, but you just finished that corporate lobby commission, didn't you? He said, referring to one of the larger, more lucrative, for me, private jobs I had landed. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was significant for my standards. I had planned to use it to pay off some lingering debt and finally build up a small emergency fund. Yeah, I did, but that's earmarked. He leaned in, lowering his voice like we were co-conspirators. Michelle, this is huge. Ground floor. Think about the potential return. Sarah's already in. Mom's putting in some too. This is a family opportunity. Sarah was in. My mother was in. The thought that they saw David's venture as a family investment, but never my art career, twisted something inside me. But David was persistent. He painted a picture of future success, of me finally having financial security, maybe even enough to set up a proper studio instead of working out of my cramped apartment. He made it sound like he was giving me a chance, pulling me up into their world of tangible assets and smart investments. Against my better judgment, against the voice screaming caution in my head, I did it. I invested half of the money from the lobby commission. Half of my hard-earned, validation-proving, debt-clearing money. He drew up a simple agreement, more like a handshake promise on paper, stating repayment with interest within 3 years. I signed it, feeling a nervous flutter of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was my way into their circle of approval. 3 years came and went. David's startup didn't exactly fail, but it didn't take off either. It limped along, constantly needing more capital, more work from him. When I gently asked about the investment, bringing up the agreement, his demeanor shifted. "Oh, Michelle, come on," he sighed, waving a hand dismissively. "That was just, to get things going. The company's not profitable yet. I can't just pull money out." "But you said 3 years," I pressed, trying to keep my voice steady. That money represented months of grinding work, of saying no to things I needed, of ignoring my own financial precariousness because I wanted to help him, to be part of the family team. "Things change," he said, his tone hardening. "Look, it was family helping family, right? I helped you get on your feet when you needed it sometimes, didn't I?" He was twisting the narrative, equating my free labor and small kindnesses over the years with my significant lump sum investment in his business venture. "That was different, David. I painted Mom's house as a favor. This was an investment." "It's still family," he insisted, his voice rising slightly. "You want me to sink the company just so you can get your little bit back? You don't need it anyway. You're living simply, aren't you?" Living simply. That was their euphemism for broke. He was using my financial situation, the very thing they mocked me for, as a reason not to repay me. The injustice of it took my breath away. Sarah, when I mentioned it to her, shrugged. "Startups are risky, Michelle. You knew that. It's just money. David will make it work eventually. Just money." To her, maybe it was. To me, it was a huge chunk of my security and my pride. My mother's response was even more disheartening. "Oh, darling, don't pressure David. He's under so much stress with the business. Can't you just let it go? It's family." It's family. That phrase, used as both a shield and a weapon, was the justification for all their demands, all their dismissals, and now, for outright financial betrayal. They used my desire for connection and belonging against me, framing their exploitation as acts of familial duty or shared risk, while never valuing my contributions or respecting my boundaries. The investment wasn't just about the money, it was about their complete disregard for my efforts, my planning, my very different, but equally valid, struggles. It felt like a physical blow, leaving me reeling in silence. I let it go, outwardly, but the resentment and hurt festered inside, a slow poison. It was in the wake of this betrayal, feeling lower than ever, questioning everything, that I saw the call for proposals for the City of Portland's major downtown revitalization project. They were commissioning a large-scale public art piece for the main plaza, something iconic, something that would represent the spirit of the city. The budget was significant, the scope enormous. It felt utterly out of my league. My initial reaction was despair. Why bother? Their voices echoed in my head. "You'll just waste your time." I almost didn't apply. The weight of their skepticism, combined with my own self-doubt after the David debacle, was nearly crushing. But something deeper stirred. Maybe it was the sheer audacity of the project that appealed to the part of me that had always dreamed big, the part they tried to shrink. Maybe it was a desperate need to prove them wrong, not just to them, but to myself. Maybe it was simply that art was the only language I truly knew, the only place where I felt fully myself, and the thought of bringing something beautiful and meaningful into the public sphere was a powerful pull. I decided to apply. Secretly, at first. I didn't tell my family. I couldn't bear the anticipated eye rolls, the discouraging words disguised as practicality. I poured every ounce of my being into the proposal. I researched the history of the plaza, the city's diverse communities, the architectural elements of the surrounding buildings. I sketched, I painted maquettes, I wrote and rewrote the artist's statement, trying to articulate the vision that was taking shape in my mind, a piece that spoke of connection, resilience, and the vibrant, often messy, energy of urban life. The process was grueling. There were multiple rounds of submissions, interviews with a panel of city officials, art curators, and community representatives. Each stage felt like a miracle, a tiny flicker of validation against the darkness of my internal landscape. When I finally told my family I was a finalist, their reactions were typically muted. "Oh, that's nice, dear," my mother said, her tone suggesting it was probably some small, easily forgotten sculpture for a park bench. "Be careful not to get your hopes up too high, Michelle," Sarah advised, ever the pragmatist. "These big government projects are always political and competitive." David, of course, immediately went to the money. "Wow, a city project? Must be a decent budget. If you win, maybe you can finally pay off that loan I gave you back in college." He had spotted me a few $100s once when I was truly broke, a debt I had long since repaid, but he liked to bring it up to reinforce the narrative that he had supported me while I floundered. Their reactions were like a shield, protecting them from having to genuinely engage with the possibility of my success. It kept me safely in their box, the artistic but ultimately unserious daughter, sister. It hurt, but by then, I was almost used to it. Their lack of enthusiasm, their inability to see this as anything more than a fleeting stroke of luck, or a potential source of funds, fueled a quiet fire within me. I wasn't doing this for them anymore. I was doing it for me. Then the call came. I was in my apartment, surrounded by sketches and empty coffee cups, the air thick with the smell of paint. The voice on the other end was formal, professional. They informed me that my proposal had been selected. My design would be the centerpiece of the new plaza. My hand trembled as I hung up the phone. I stood there for a long moment, the silence of my apartment amplifying the pounding of my heart. Tears welled in my eyes, not of pure joy, but a complex mix of elation, exhaustion, and a profound, aching sadness that the people I wanted to share this with the most were the same people who had spent years telling me I couldn't. I called my mother first. Her reaction was delayed, like she didn't quite process what I was saying. "The big project? Downtown? You won?" Her voice was tinged with surprise, maybe even disbelief. "Well, that's wonderful, dear." Still hesitant, still cautious. Sarah's response was pragmatic. "Oh, wow, Michelle. Congratulations. That's a huge contract. Did you get an advance? Make sure you read the fine print on deliverables and payment schedules." Her mind immediately went to business, not art. David, predictably, circled back to the money. "Seriously? The main plaza? That's gotta be what, 6 figures? Maybe more? Hey, maybe we should talk about that investment again now." Their congratulations felt hollow, overshadowed by their persistent focus on the practical, the financial, the ways my success might benefit them. There was no real joy for me, no acknowledgement of the years of struggle, the dedication, the sheer artistic achievement. It was like they saw the shiny outcome but refused to look at the messy, paint-stained process that got me there. I decided then that I would keep the details of the project, the challenges, the creative process, mostly to myself. It was mine. Creating the piece was the most challenging, most rewarding experience of my life. It was a massive undertaking, a multi-component sculptural installation integrated with interactive light elements. It required working with engineers, fabricators, city planners, construction crews. I spent countless hours on site, in workshops, sketching, overseeing, problem-solving. It was physically demanding, mentally exhausting, and creatively exhilarating. I immersed myself in the work, the early mornings on the cold concrete of the plaza, the late nights reviewing technical drawings, the frustrating setbacks, the moments of pure, unadulterated creative flow. It was a world away from family dinners and subtle put-downs. The people I worked with saw me as a professional, an artist with a vision. They listened to me, they respected my expertise, they collaborated with me to bring this enormous thing into existence. It was the first time in my life I felt truly valued for my skills and my dedication on such a large scale. My family occasionally called. My mother would ask superficial questions about the project, mostly concerned with when it would be finished and if there would be a public event. Sarah would offer unsolicited business advice, often prefaced with, "As a lawyer, I just think you should be careful about." David mostly just joked about how rich I was going to be, sometimes hinting about family loans he had given me in the distant past. They still didn't seem to grasp the magnitude of it, the artistic significance, the personal journey it represented. They saw a transaction, a job, a paycheck. I tried, sometimes, to explain the concept behind a specific element, the meaning woven into the forms and colors. They would nod politely, their eyes glazing over, waiting for me to finish so they could ask about the unveiling date. As the project neared completion, the buzz around it grew. The local news featured segments on the work in progress, articles appeared in art journals and city magazines. My name started appearing in print, attached to words like visionary, transformative, bold. It felt surreal. This public recognition was so utterly different from the private dismissal I had known for so long. My family, of course, noticed the media attention. Their tone shifted subtly at first. "Oh, Michelle, I saw that article about you in the paper. How exciting." My mother sounded almost proud, though it felt borrowed, based on external validation rather than genuine appreciation. Sarah mentioned it to her colleagues. I heard through the grapevine, framing it as her sister's impressive achievement, carefully omitting the years she'd treated my work as a quaint hobby. David stopped making jokes about past loans and started speculating on future earnings and potential collaborations. They wanted details now, asking about the unveiling ceremony, wanting to know who would be there. They wanted to be seen associated with me, with the success they had never believed in. It was jarring, this sudden reversal, and it felt deeply uncomfortable. Their interest wasn't in me, the artist, or the art itself. It was in the prestige, the potential reflected glory. The day of the unveiling arrived. The plaza was packed. City officials, art world figures, the press, and thousands of members of the public were gathered. There was a stage, podiums, banners with my name on them. It felt utterly overwhelming, like standing on the edge of a cliff. My family was there, sitting in a reserved section closer to the front. I saw them when I walked onto the stage. My mother beaming a bright, almost performative smile. Sarah looking poised and professional. David scanning the crowd, perhaps looking for important people to network with. Speeches were made, praising the vision, the collaboration, the impact the art would have on the city. They spoke my name with reverence, highlighting my dedication and talent. It was a stark, almost dizzying contrast to the years of hearing my name attached to sighs of disappointment or patronizing advice. Then, the moment came. With a flourish, the coverings were removed. The full scope of the installation was revealed. It was enormous, vibrant, dynamic. Light elements I had designed began to pulse, interacting with the sculptures, casting shifting patterns across the plaza. A collective gasp went through the crowd, followed by a wave of applause that built into a roaring ovation. Thousands of people were looking at my work, cheering, taking photos, their faces alight with genuine awe and appreciation. They saw it, they really saw it. And through their eyes, I saw it too. Not just a job finished, but a culmination of years of passion, struggle, and unwavering belief in something I felt compelled to create. I stood there, on the stage, the sound of the crowd washing over me, and my world tilted on its axis. The years of feeling small, invisible, and misunderstood fractured and began to fall away. In that moment, surrounded by strangers who celebrated my art, I felt a profound sense of belonging and validation that my family had never given me. I wasn't the black sheep. I was an artist, a creator, someone who had brought something beautiful and meaningful into existence. I glanced towards my family's section. My mother was wiping a tear from her eye, a complicated expression on her face. Sarah was clapping, her smile wide, but her eyes seemed to be assessing the important figures around her. David was on his phone, already probably texting about the event, tagging himself in photos. Even in this moment, their reactions felt filtered through their own lenses: my mother's sentimentality, Sarah's social currency, David's transactional mindset. It solidified a growing realization. This success, this validation, was mine alone. It didn't belong to them, and it didn't require their approval. After the ceremony, there was a reception. People swarmed me: journalists, art enthusiasts, city officials, ordinary citizens who just wanted to tell me how the piece moved them. I was gracious, trying to absorb it all. My family eventually made their way through the crowd towards me, wearing proud smiles that felt pasted on. "Michelle, darling, that was spectacular," my mother exclaimed, hugging me tightly. "We are so proud of you." The words felt foreign coming from her, tinged with the suddenness of this shift. "Absolutely incredible, Michelle," Sarah said, offering a firm handshake and a sophisticated smile. "I knew you had it in you. All that hard work paid off." "You knew?" The silent question hung in the air between us. She had offered advice on contracts, but never once encouraged the work itself. "Yeah, sis, this is amazing." David slapped me on the back. "Totally killed it. You're famous now. So, about that investment." He couldn't even wait. Even now, with the cheers of the crowd still echoing, his first thought was money, was leverage. Their sudden enthusiasm, their claims of pride and belief, felt like a performance. It wasn't about my journey or my art. It was about being associated with success, with someone the city was celebrating. It was the most transparent form of conditional love I had ever witnessed from them, and seeing it so clearly, after years of yearning for their approval, felt less like a victory and more like a final, quiet heartbreak. The days that followed were a whirlwind of interviews, emails, and invitations. My phone rang constantly. Opportunities that had felt impossible a few weeks ago were suddenly appearing. It was exhilarating, but also disorienting. My life had fundamentally changed, and I was still processing what that meant, especially in relation to my family. Their calls and texts increased. Family dinners were scheduled. Invitations to join them for this or that event poured in. The subtext was clear. They wanted me back in the fold, but on the new terms dictated by my public success. They wanted to introduce the artist to their friends, to bask in the reflected glow. The turning point didn't happen in one dramatic shouted argument. It unfolded more quietly, fueled by the newfound clarity the unveiling had given me. The first real test came when David called, pushing hard about the startup investment. "Seriously, Michelle, now that you've got this huge payday coming in, it's the perfect time to settle up on that loan. I could really use that capital right now to pivot." I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment to use the voice I had found. "David," I said, my voice steady, devoid of the usual placating tone. "That wasn't a loan. That was an investment in your business. We had an agreement, and you defaulted on it 3 years ago." He was silent for a moment, clearly not expecting this directness. "What?" "No, I didn't default. The company just hasn't made money yet. It's family money, Michelle. It works differently." "No, David," I insisted, the words flowing surprisingly easily. "It doesn't work differently. You asked me to invest in your business, promising repayment. I did. You didn't repay. That's not on me to just let go because we're family. That was my money, earned from my work that you always dismissed." His voice rose in indignation. "Dismissed? I didn't dismiss your work. I just wanted you to be financially stable. By telling me my art wasn't a real job? By asking me to invest half the money from one of my biggest commissions into your risky venture and then refusing to repay it? By treating my time and skills as worthless?" I listed the hurts, not yelling, but stating them as facts, the weight of years behind each word. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "How can you do this? To your own brother? After everything I've done for you?" "What have you done for me, David?" I asked quietly. "Besides, constantly make me feel less than and then take my money?" He hung up on me. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't the crushing silence of defeat I was used to. It was the quiet aftermath of having finally spoken my truth. The confrontation with Sarah was different. She called, ostensibly to congratulate me again, but quickly steered the conversation towards how busy I must be, how important it was to manage my new public image, subtly positioning herself as the expert who could help me navigate this world. "Michelle, you need a good lawyer now," she said, her tone professional. "I can look over any contracts, make sure you're not getting taken advantage of. My firm handles this kind of thing." "Sarah," I interrupted gently. "I appreciate the offer, but I already have a lawyer who specializes in art commissions and public installations. They handled the city contract." There was a beat of silence. "Oh, you do?" Her voice lost some of its polish. "Well, just checking in. You know, you're going to have people coming out of the woodwork now, wanting things. You have to be careful." "I know," I said, "and I'm learning to say no." "No?" she repeated, as if the word was foreign. "To opportunities?" "Michelle, this is your chance to really build something big." "Not every opportunity is right for me, Sarah," I explained, thinking of all the times I'd said yes to their demands out of obligation. "And no can be just as powerful as yes. Sometimes it's more powerful." I didn't bring up her past dismissals directly, but the implication hung in the air. I was no longer the little sister who needed her guidance or approval. My mother's attempts to reconnect were the most emotionally complex. She fluctuated between gushing pride and a strange sort of injured confusion, as if my success was both thrilling and somehow a betrayal of the narrative she'd held onto for so long, that I was the one who needed her help, the one who wasn't quite making it. She wanted me to come over for dinner, just us. When I arrived, the framed article about the Plaza project was prominently displayed on the mantelpiece, right next to Sarah's framed law degree and a photo of David receiving an award. I felt a pang of something. Was it satisfaction? Sadness? Both? Over dinner, she kept bringing up the project, repeating things she'd heard on the news, showing off photos of the art she'd taken with her phone. But every compliment felt like it was followed by a quiet sigh, a hint of what she wished I would do now. "You know," she said, stirring her soup, "it's wonderful, truly wonderful, but you must be exhausted. Maybe now you can take a break? Find something less demanding? You don't have to work so hard anymore." "Mom," I said softly, "this isn't just work to me. This is what I love. This is what I've always worked towards." "Yes, but, you know, a nice, stable life. Maybe meet someone? Settle down? You have so much potential now." Her old refrain, but with a new twist. Now that I was successful by her standards, she wanted me to pivot to her other expectations for a woman's life: marriage, stability, domesticity. "My life is stable, Mom," I said firmly. "It's just not stable in the way you always envisioned. And my potential isn't something to be cashed in for a different kind of life. My potential is this. It's my art." Her face fell slightly. "I just worry about you, dear." "I know you do," I said, trying to soften my tone. "But you don't need to anymore. I'm okay. More than okay." I didn't explicitly set a boundary, but I held my ground, refusing to slip back into the role of the worrying her mother-daughter. It was uncomfortable, but necessary. The confrontations, or rather, the quiet assertions of my boundaries, weren't clean or easy. My family didn't suddenly have a miraculous change of heart. There were periods of awkward silence, hurt feelings, mostly theirs, and attempts to revert to old patterns. David sent passive-aggressive texts about how I was abandoning family. Sarah made pointed remarks about how success shouldn't change a person. My mother occasionally sent articles about stable, traditional careers, just in case I ever changed my mind. But I held firm. I learned to filter their interactions, to choose which calls to answer, to politely decline invitations that felt transactional, to steer conversations away from their unsolicited advice or attempts to leverage my success. It wasn't about being cruel, it was about protecting my energy, my peace, and my newfound sense of self-worth. The distance grew. It was painful, a different kind of pain than the constant ache of seeking their approval. It was the pain of acknowledging that the family connection I craved wasn't possible with the dynamics that existed. They loved the idea of me fitting into their world, or the reflection of success I could offer, but they struggled to love or even respect the actual me, the artist who chose a different path. In that space created by distance, I began to heal. I focused on my work, taking on projects that resonated with my vision, collaborating with people who valued my voice. I built a community of fellow artists and friends who saw me, supported me, and celebrated my authentic self. I started therapy, processing years of feeling inadequate and seeking external validation. I learned that my worth wasn't tied to my family's approval, my bank account balance, or anyone else's definition of success. It was inherent. It was in my passion, my resilience, my ability to create beauty and meaning. The money from the city commission provided a level of financial security I had never known. It allowed me to rent a proper studio space, invest in better materials, and most importantly, say no to projects that didn't align with my values or were exploitative. I was no longer desperate, and that changed the power dynamic in every interaction, not just with my family, but in my professional life as well. I never got that investment money back from David. I eventually let it go, not because I forgave the betrayal, but because the energy of holding on to that resentment was heavier than the value of the money itself. It became a hard lesson learned, a costly reminder of what can happen when you prioritize family obligation over your own well-being and boundaries. Years later, my relationship with my family is cordial but distant. We see each other on major holidays, carefully navigating around the unspoken truths. They still bring up the Plaza project, but it feels less like genuine pride and more like a trophy they can point to, proof that they are somehow connected to something successful. I don't seek their approval anymore. I don't share the intimate details of my life or my work. I exist independently of their narrative, no longer the black sheep, but simply Michelle, the artist. The path wasn't easy. Letting go of the need for their approval was a process, a shedding of layers of conditioning and hurt. There were moments of doubt, moments of loneliness. But standing in my own light, owning my path, and valuing my worth based on my own terms was the most liberating thing I have ever done. The validation from the world was wonderful, a powerful catalyst, but the true transformation happened quietly, within me. I found my voice, I set my boundaries, and I reclaimed my identity from the shadows of their expectations. I was no longer defined by their disappointment, but by my own strength and the art I continued to create. I was finally, truly, seen. So, where am I now? I'm here, in my studio, surrounded by canvases and the smell of paint, getting ready for my next project. The one that's entirely mine, chosen because it speaks to me, because it allows me to explore something I care about. That journey from being the overlooked, underestimated black sheep to standing in front of my work being celebrated by thousands and then using that moment to finally stand up for myself, it was messy, painful, and ultimately incredibly empowering. I learned that family isn't always the safest place to be. That sometimes, the people who are supposed to lift you up are the ones holding you back, often without even realizing the depth of the damage they're doing. Their expectations, their definitions of success, they were theirs, not mine. And trying to contort myself to fit into their narrow box was slowly killing my spirit. Finding my voice, setting boundaries, and choosing to walk away from dynamics that were toxic, even if they were family dynamics, was the hardest but most important thing I've ever done. It wasn't about punishing them, it was about saving myself. It was about finally giving myself the respect, the validation, and the permission to be exactly who I was, unapologetically. If you're watching this, and you've felt like the black sheep, or like your worth isn't seen by the people who matter most, know that you are not alone. Your worth isn't up for debate. It doesn't depend on anyone else's approval, their definition of success, or their ability to understand your path. Keep creating. Keep pursuing what sets your soul on fire, even if no one else gets it yet. Build your own community, find your own validation, and trust the quiet knowing within you. Your path is valid, your struggles are real, and your voice deserves to be heard. And it is absolutely okay, necessary even, to protect your peace, even if that means creating distance from people you love. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please consider giving this video a like, maybe subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of my work and hear more stories. And please, share your own experiences in the comments below. Let's connect. Remember, you are worthy, just as you are. Your light is needed. Don't let anyone dim it.